Alright. Hey guys, Deanna Cat here. So it's a overcast day here in February, early February on the Central Coast, and we have all of our seedlings, well, some of our seedlings out here today, so I wanted to show you how we thin our seedlings. Most of them are actually still in the greenhouse, but I figured it'd be easier to show out here, so I brought a few trays out for us to work with. These were all started about 3 weeks ago now, so they germinated about 2 weeks ago only, and you can see how big and lush they already are getting, and they're definitely in need of a thinning. You want to thin your seedlings fairly early. If you wait till they're too old, you know, it can actually start stunting their growth pretty quickly. When they get their first set of true leaves, which I'll show you when we do a little more up close shot here when I'm actually thinning, after they get their first set of true leaves, you want to start thinning them as soon as you can, because when they aren't thinned, the seedlings are going to compete with each other. They'll compete for air, for root space, for nutrients, for water, for light, and the crowded nature, which these are obviously a little bit crowded right now, can increase the chances for disease and things if you're not getting good air circulation. So thinning is an important part of starting your seedlings. So we'll go over the two different methods that we use, primarily for like our veggies. So a lot of these are veggies over here. We will snip with thin little scissors and just cut the unwanted ones at the root line, or I mean at the soil line. So I'll show you that. And then the one other method that we use is to actually take out chunks at a time and lightly separate them. And we'll usually do that more for like flowers or something that aren't going to live in these containers for much longer. I wouldn't want to take our tomatoes here and then break them up and then pot them up into bigger pots for a couple reasons. One is I don't want to disrupt their roots, and we only have limited space for a limited amount of bigger plants like tomatoes or peppers or squash or things like that. And so I don't really need to keep all these seedlings. We already started at least 2 little pots of every type that we want. And so if I were to separate these all out, or actually some people pull and pluck them out, we don't like to do that, and I'll talk about that more in a moment too. But really we don't have any use for these, so for me to actually take these all out, pull them all apart, and pot them up into little larger containers or the same size container, we just don't need them again. But if you have limited space to start things and a ton of space to grow stuff, then you could start them together and then lightly separate them. But you'd want to do that early on before they get too large, before their roots get all entangled in one another, because then you're going to risk damaging the roots if you're trying to kind of rip them apart later. So we usually, for veggies, will trim with the little scissors. For flowers, these are all zinnias here. We're probably going to get them planted out sooner, probably not today. It's still going to be pretty rainy here for the next couple of weeks, and it's still a little cold. But probably in about the next 3 weeks or so, we might start planting out some sunflowers. Our zinnias, our sunflowers, we have cosmos, and all kinds of things in the greenhouse. And so with these, because for me, the more the merrier with the flowers, I can tuck them in all over the place. I can put them in little borders or in with the veggies. Then I don't want to kill off some of these, and we have space for them. I might not keep all of them, but I'll actually pull this out and separate them out. And then instead of having to pot them up into their own little containers after separating them, then I can just go ahead and plant them out where they need to go. But that would only be after they're hardened off. And these aren't hardened off yet, so I'm going to show you an example of that, but I'm actually not going to be planting these out quite yet. It's starting to sprinkle. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and rearrange the camera, and we will show you the close-up of how I'm going to do some of this thinning. Okay, so now we have out just a few different seedling types that I want to work with to show you the different types of thinning that we're going to do today. So as you can see, these are pretty heavily seeded. These are Swiss chard seedlings, and we did seed these a little bit heavier, and some of our other greens like this is an Asian green or some mustard greens, heavily, kind of intentionally, because a couple things. One is the seeds are oftentimes a lot smaller, especially for brassicas, like kale and cabbage and things. They have such tiny seeds. It's kind of harder to do just a couple seeds per cell or container. So sometimes I'll just put a pinch in there, but no big deal if they're heavily seeded and we get a lot of sprouts, because guess what? These are all now edible microgreens. So when I actually thin these, they're not going to go to waste. These are nutrient-packed little baby greens. You can eat the greens of any types of seedlings where you would normally eat the leaf. So beet greens, radish greens, all of these different kales, Ginger's talking to us. And then, so the ones you wouldn't want to eat are like the tomatoes and whatnot. And so you can tell that we didn't seed the tomatoes quite as thickly. We only have a few per container, and same with the peppers. And that's because, again, we don't have really extra space to thin these out and keep them, but also these are not edible. So the nightshade family, tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, you wouldn't want to eat the greens of those. And so when we do thin these and cut them out, those are just going to get composted. So when we actually start thinning, so I have my little thinning shears here. Basically what I look for is any seedlings that look the strongest that I want to keep. This one's really heavily done, but I just start trimming through, and I'm just clipping away any of the ones that are skinnier and smaller. So as you can see, now I have a few little seedlings, and I'm just going to start trimming them and putting them in the bowl. And if you aren't 100% sure which one you want to keep at this stage, you can go ahead and keep like 2 if you want to, or maybe even 3 in there. But you really do want to thin them down at least a few, because obviously I have way too many in here right now. If they're looking kind of leggy, like some of these are a little bit tall, then I'll try to keep the ones that are maybe less leggy and a little bit shorter. So there's a couple that are actually closer to the soil line, and then a few that are taller. So I'm just going to take out the ones that are a bit taller. The good thing though is that, now it's all stuck in here. This one's going to be a pain to thin because they're sticky. The good thing though for something like a tomato is that later, even if these are a little bit tall and leggy, these can actually get buried all the way up to their where they first start to branch and have leaves. So when we put these into a larger pot, we'll put them into like this is a 4-incher, we'll put them into a 6 or an 8-incher probably in a few weeks, and at that point we can bury the stem all the way up to there. Same goes for a lot of the brassicas and kale. You don't want to do that though with peppers. Peppers don't like that, so I don't want to give you poor advice, so don't do that with everything, but definitely tomatoes and definitely your kales and brassicas, you can bury the stem and it'll actually develop more roots off of here. So if they're a little bit leggy, not a big deal. So I'm going to keep continuing on through here. And then one of the things I wanted to mention too is really how much these things are going to take off and start to really grow strong and well after this thinning. I experimented kind of accidentally one time, and I left a couple of my bok choy about this size and didn't thin one set of them, and I left 2, and then the rest of them all had 1. And within like 2 to 3 weeks, all the other ones had like doubled in size or tripled in size. They were huge, and the other ones were still basically almost the same size. The ones that didn't get thinned were way behind and really runty. So that just goes to show, you know, what the real importance of doing this thinning is. Okay, so I think I'm almost down to 1 per cell here. And which one do I want to keep? We'll keep this guy there. Okay, so that's that. So now look at all of these microgreens. These are all baby Swiss chard, and we can eat these and they're delicious. And now we have a thinned, happy little package. And one thing I wanted to point out that I said I was going to mention, I feel like I'm trying to talk over my crazy chicken here, is that we don't like to, and some people do, but we don't like to actually pull the seedlings. So say on these tomatoes, we wouldn't want to pull this out to try to keep it, because then it's going to possibly disrupt the one that we want to keep. And then it'll also possibly either uproot that one or rip its roots and, you know, cause it to be set back or transplant shocked or something like that. Not transplant shocked, but shock it in its container. So if you wanted to keep these, again, that's where we would want to pull out and separate them, which I'll show you here in a second with the zinnias. So just going through, same thing for these guys, just these ones I don't want to keep though. So I'm going to set that aside and just picking, you know, whoever looks the strongest and the healthiest. My gosh, Ginger. That's Ginger. She's crazy. Okay. So now we have little single tomato. That's a sun gold. Love sun golds. And I'm not gonna do these ones on camera, I don't think, because they were getting kind of sticky. But same thing, looking for the strong ones, looking for the less leggy ones. Wow, pipe down, chicken. Okay, and she actually listened, I think. Let's do this pepper. What kind of pepper is this? A Cupid. That's a nice sweet little pepper. So again, not keeping the greens, and we'll just thin it down to 1. So I'm just going to go through and just pick. So here's a cucumber. I think I like how this one looks. This one's a little bit you know, I think it just had its seed stuck on the tip of the leaves like that for longer, so there's nothing wrong with it, but that's the one I'm going to keep there. Same with these guys. We'll just keep one and move down the line. And so the other kind of thinning that I wanted to show you really quick before I just go through, and I'm going to do all these, you know, not bore you and do that all on camera, is, just get that out of the way, is doing something where you would actually separate them. So here's some zinnias. Say we wanted to plant these out soon. So these are already potentially hardened off. They're not hardened off yet. Okay, Welsumers are noisy chickens. So I will just gently tip it, because I don't want to tip it all the way upside down and have them all fall out. Some people have like a little spoon or something that they can tuck under here to help get it out, but I just gently push from the bottom like this and pull the whole little package out. And so with these guys, then you can just kind of gently break up the root balls and see if you can gently separate them. And so sunflowers are super hardy. I always do this with sunflowers. These ones, you can tell, already have quite a bit of roots that are intertwined, so it could have been better to do this even earlier. And see, you can see how much these are really going to get manhandled, and that's why I don't love doing this for like our peppers or tomatoes or something. But I can gently pull these apart. Okay, so there's two, and there's individuals. So there we go. And so I'm trying to untangle and then lightly pull as much as I can rather than ripping. So now you can see there's the roots for one zinnia plant, and if this was hard enough, I'd go ahead and plant it in the garden. Today though, I'm just going to pot these back up into little 4-inch pots so that I can keep them nice and happy before they're getting planted out. And so those are the two different ways that we thin seedlings. We prefer to snip. We don't like to pull, and you can gently take some apart like this if you'd like to. And I think that's about it. So I think I'm gonna go and kind of clean up a little bit here and then go through and continue trimming, and we'll probably end up with a nice big bowl of all kinds of microgreens with all these different kale and mustards that we need to thin today. Okay, so check it out. Those are all of our thin seedlings. We've got tons of different microgreens now. Like I said, we can eat some of these raw, or we could cook them. And then we're all good to go in the greenhouse here. So everybody's thinned and happy. Have a lot more room for light and air. I didn't thin everybody. These are, again, some sunflowers and stuff, so I will just pull those apart later. But all of the veggies have been thinned. And we're looking good. And fava beans are one we will probably pull apart and separate as well. So unlike other beans, a regular, bush bean, green bean, don't like to be even transplanted. Those are best direct sown straight into the garden bed. But fava beans are a little bit different. You can start them early, and these actually separate and pull apart pretty easily too. Oops. So yeah, that's what's going on in here. Happy growing, happy thinning. And we'll see you next time. I think Ginger finally laid that egg after all that chatter. What, honey? What, honey? Hi, Annie. Let's see what all that chatter was about. If I can get in here. Oh, hi, Ginger. You still haven't laid your egg? Have you still not laid that egg? Hi, Annie. Are you a good birdie? Okay, let's leave the sister alone. Oh, gosh. Really? Craziness.